Hi, my name is David, and just recently I posted a thing on Facebook, a picture of a gathering I had last Sunday. It was a flat Earth meetup, and after I posted the video, I got a lot of questions from people who had never heard of flat Earth. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to answer those questions, and I'm also going to give a brief summary of the whole flat Earth phenomenon that's been taking place on the internet. When we go to school, we learn about this idea of where we are and where we came from. We learn we're on a spherical ball spinning and moving around the sun, and we learn about how the sun is also moving and it's part of this galaxy, and we learn about this idea of there being a big bang and how we evolved from a single cell to different life forms to humans, and so we have this education about where we are, where we came from. And while we're learning about this, at least for me, is I always had questions like, how do you know about what happened billions of years ago? How do you know what is so many billions of miles away? And and how do you know? I mean, it was a question like, how is it that my experience is that the Earth is flat, but I'm told that I live on a sphere. So all these questions come up, and the thing about YouTube that's really interesting to me is that the questions that people are afraid to ask in person, in the real world, whatever, are more easily like there's permission for some reason to ask them on YouTube. And people are questioning things. And the big thing that people have been questioning is, how do we know we live on a globe, and could the Earth be flat? And about 4 years ago, I found this video, Flat Earth Clues, and it led me on this investigation of, is the Earth flat? And basically, the whole situation is this. I mean, it's hard to put it in a simple form, but I'll do my best. People are asking questions about the heliocentric model, and I'll give you examples of some questions that make people doubt whether what we were taught is correct. And there are questions I asked in a video I did earlier, but I'll ask them again because they're simple. If the sun is 93 million miles away, and given the speed of light, it would be 8 light minutes away from Earth, and it's about this big in the sky, how is it that stars that are said to be light years away are visible if after only 8 light minutes, the sun, which is supposedly a medium-sized star, is only this big? I mean, think about it. Another question is, how could there be a vacuum right next to the atmosphere? When you go higher, you eventually come to a vacuum, according to heliocentric theory. And why doesn't the vacuum suck out the atmosphere when, they say gravity holds it in, but how is it that a helium balloon, just by being lighter than air, goes, counters gravity? Another question, how is it that I could see further than I should if the Earth is a circumference, 25,000 miles, and there's a formula for calculating curvature? Why can I see things like the Chicago skyline across Lake Michigan? So all these different questions, and that's just 3 of them. I could stand here and probably think of 100 such questions, and each question puts reasonable doubt in the model that people are taught in school. And after over 100 questions, it's like enough doubt to make people question whether what they were taught is right. And people are offering an alternative model where instead of the Earth being a sphere, it's a flat stationary plane where the North Pole is in the middle, and the Antarctica, instead of being a continent at the bottom of the ball, is an ice ring around the perimeter of a disk, which we live on. And so they have this alternative model that, and the situation is many people are trying to defend the heliocentric model and trying to debunk this other model. And people are not successful. And what's happening is more and more people are becoming what they call flat earthers. And so anyway, when people discover this and try to tell their friends about it or their family, they get told they're crazy, and they look to other flat earthers for connection. And anyway, so last Sunday I had what might be this meetup in Boulder of flat earthers, and I posted a video on Facebook, and I got a lot of questions from people who had never heard of this before. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to answer these questions. First question I got was from Seth. Seth is someone I know. He's a neuroscientist. He's someone I know from many years ago. We were at the University of Colorado Go Club. Go is an Oriental board game. And he says to me, "You're joking, aren't you?" And I said, and what's interesting is that first video that I saw, Flat Earth Clues, one of the first things that said is Mark Sargent, the guy who made the video, he says, "This is a joke, right?" And he says, "No, this is not a joke." And no, it's not a joke. And I want to give y'all something to think about. So me and Seth met at the Go Club, this Oriental board game, and what's been going on in the Go world is that computers are starting to, they're starting to become computer programs that surpass humans in the game of Go, which is a new thing, unlike chess, which happened a while ago, maybe 1997 when Kasparov got beaten. But anyway, and what shocked the Go world is that some of the things the computer did they were moves that you specifically don't do, and things that are normal to do are moves that the program did not do. And so basically the point is that the assumptions of everyone could be completely mistaken. And and another thing me and Seth have in common, we both at some point were into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and it's this martial art where the idea is to find out what works and use a scientific method to find out what works, and not trust that what people collectively believe is good, how it might not be. And a lot of jiu-jitsuists are now flat earthers. Examples are Eddie Bravo and Kron Gracie, and it's big anyway. Flat Earth, big in jiu-jitsu, and it makes sense because it's all about challenging what people think is true and finding out the truth by direct experience. And so anyway, the next question I got was from Chris. Chris is another guy I know from Go. He's an engineer, also an amazing rock climber. And anyway, he says to me, "How do you explain gravity on flat Earth?" And in the flat Earth theory, we don't use gravity. They're basically these two forces, density and buoyancy. If something is denser than air, it goes down. If it's lighter than air, it goes up. And it's similar to like in water, when something floats, if it's lighter than air, like styrofoam or wood, and then if it's heavier than air, like metal, it'll fall down. And so you have density and buoyancy. And it might not be that simple. There might be electromagnetic forces affecting what goes up and down. And there are a lot of problems with the theory of gravity. When Newton formulated his ideas about it, he had no evidence that mass attracts mass, and there's still no evidence mass attracts mass. And the big experiment that people refer to for the proof of gravity is this experiment in 1798 by a guy named Henry Cavendish, and where he did this experiment in his barn. And it's basically, to make a long story short, the experiment has never been replicated, and this gravitational constant that he made up, for this formula, force equals g times mass 1 times mass 2 over d squared. It's basically that constant has been made up. And don't take my word for it. I expect someone to question what I'm saying and research it. But anyway, the next question I got was from Thane. Thane is someone I know from this conference called Gathering for Gardner. It's a conference, it's a combination of mathematicians, magicians, and skeptics. And I love the conference. It's really fun. It always opens my mind, and it's great. I performed at it several years ago, and anyway, so they have these skeptics there that. Anyway, I don't know that I want to get into that, but basically the question that he asks the question he asked was, well, first my friend John said, I'm a little bit confused. I respect your intelligence, but I think flat Earth is quackery. And so Thane chimes in and he says, yes, flat Earth is quackery. How do you explain satellites? How do you explain GPS? I mean, and anyway, there are better flat Earth explanations to these questions, and I'll tell you what they are. So GPS, Global Positioning System, is a advanced version of something that was developed. It had been developed in World War II called NORAD, which is a ground-based system for finding out where you are in relation to. Basically, it's based on something called triangulation, where you find out where you are on a plane by knowing your relationships to two other points that are known on the plane. And so you don't need to have a satellite in space to find out where you are on the ground. It could be just these relationships between these two other points that are known. And the problem with the satellite idea is, first of all, satellites were invented by a science fiction writer named Arthur C. Clarke, the guy who wrote 2001: A Space Odyssey. And we're told that they're 21,000 miles up in space and in low Earth orbit and circling the Earth. And if satellites were the way cell phones work, I mean, think about this: if they were the way cell phones worked, why is it that my cell phone gets bad reception when I go from where I am in Boulder up in the mountains 8 miles away, and if it's 21,000 miles away that it gets the signals, why would 8 miles make a difference? It's more reasonable explanation is that the signal's coming from something on the ground. So anyway, the next question I got was from Tom, and Tom asked me, how do you explain flights over Antarctica, where you have like for example, Buenos Aires to Auckland, Argentina to Auckland, New Zealand, and so in the ball Earth, Antarctica, continent on the bottom of a ball, in the flat Earth, Antarctica perimeter around the ring, and so flat earthers say you cannot circumnavigate the Earth north to south, and so anyway, they had it used to be that you could not go from places like whether it's Auckland to Santiago or Sydney to Auckland to Buenos Aires or Sydney to Santiago direct. You had to connect in like Los Angeles, which makes sense on a flat Earth map. But they started having these flights in about 2015, when flat earthers would call the airline companies to complain about, why aren't there flights, and anyway, so people started taking these flights to debunk flat Earth, and what they found was that it is possible for it to, for example, Santiago to Sydney, for a plane to go fast enough to reach the destination on time, but it's not possible it does not work in the globe model because the compass readings were consistent with the flat Earth model, but not the globe. And with Santiago, with Auckland, with the question you asked about Auckland to Buenos Aires, where he says it goes over the South Pole, people have tried to take that flight, and I think it was this flight they were talking about, where they tried to take it and they were kicked off the flight because they were doing it for scientific purposes, and they were told it would endanger the passengers, which I don't know how that makes any sense. And so, and I think it was Santiago, it was Auckland to Buenos Aires. I'm not sure. I'll have to check it out. I can track it down if you're interested. But anyway, the next question I got, and I think it would be possible to make a flight and tell people that they're going over the South Pole when they're going over the around the perimeter of the ice wall. I don't think it's that difficult. But anyway, next question I got was from my friend Brian, fellow juggler, who said, "Do aliens? So aliens didn't build the pyramids, and a lot of." If the flat Earth theory is true, it could be there are places that we don't know of that are outside this map. And there could be aliens in that they just simply live in a place that we don't know about, like outside the Antarctic ice ring, and that they maybe did build the pyramids and might be aware of us, even though we're not aware of them. And we don't know. I don't know, but a lot of people resistant to flat Earth theory. Several people who, one of them is the people who believe in aliens because it would discredit the idea of outer space. Because in the flat Earth theory there's this dome or firmament. Usually, most people believe that in flat Earth world. But anyway. I hope that answers questions, and I want to. It's really nice to hear from so many people, and thanks so much for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.